Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and Dragonflight actually has gotten some class updates for Season 4, which is a bit of a surprise. On this channel, we've been covering a lot of War Within Alpha, as well as WoW Remix, and then talking about the future World of Warcraft, but I wouldn't blame any of you for forgetting that Season 4 is actually still active, and we actually get in some class tuning. So in today's video, I'm gonna go over the entire blue puzzle Blizzard released recently, which includes buffs for some of the classes that are underperforming, but also nerfs for some of the playstyles that are overperforming. And this set of changes is going to cover both PvE as well as PvP specific changes. I think generally it's good that we are actually seeing some kind of class tuning even for the final holdover season of Dragonflight until the War Within, and I actually would want to see more of these in the future. Before we go into any of these class changes, if you guys want to see more regular updates like these on how our classes are getting buffed and nerfed with every single week regularly, follow the channel. Otherwise, let's dive right in. Starting things off, we have a couple of healer changes for Evokers and Druids. For Preservation, we're seeing a 6% healing buff, which is kind of nice since it is one of my most favorite healers to play. Although, at least in situations such as Mythic Plus or Raids, we haven't really seen as much of an Evoker representation. Though in terms of the popularity share, Evokers actually have some of the less representation, specifically for M+, so maybe that'll help them out along the way. As for us Druid, we're just seeing a slight cost reduction on their Moonfire ability. Next, we have an update for Survival Hunters that tackles their tier set. Essentially, Survival Hunters went from having a very strong tier set in Season 3, which was a tier set that revolved around Fury of the Eagle and Wildfire Bombs and big damage windows and big burst opportunities, which switched over back to their Season 1 tier set for the final season of Dragonflight, with a tier set that increases the damage of Raptor Strike, Carve, and Butchery by a certain amount, with the aforesaid giving those abilities a chance to reduce the cost of your next Raptor Strike, Carve, or Butchery, but also Mongoose Bite if you talent into it, but also increasing its damage by 50%. The problem, however, with this tier set is it was actually and still is inferior to the Season 3 tier set, where a max item level version of the Blazing Dreamstalker set was actually stronger in most cases, unless you had the maximum item level Stormwing Harrier set. This blue post is looking to address the cost reduction from the 4 set, increasing it to 20 focus reduction, while the Forza damage jump is being increased from 50% to 80%, which at first sounds like a lot. Imagine your Mongoose Bite hitting 80% harder while costing 20 less focus. But even with this set of changes, hunters are still sadly disappointed. Overall, the single target results in about a 2.46 single target increase, while in AoE it's a negligible buff where the old set still outperforms the new one if you're looking for pure damage, even if you were to take a 180,000 HP cost reduction running the old set instead of the new one. Overall, they gotta have to do a lot more in order to buff up the Hunter tier set. I was excited at first seeing some actual Survival Hunter buffs, but early numbers suggest this one is going to be fairly disappointing. Looks like Survival Hunters are waiting for some actual fundamental changes in the War Within expansion. Next, moving on to more healers with Holy Paladin, which is seeing a buff to the Ward of Glory healing and Light of Dawn. For the most part, this isn't really a big healing buff, but it does kind of break apart the low Holy Power playstyle, so you can now safely go back to spending Holy Power normally instead of undercutting your cost. Then we have some more updates for the Enhancement Shaman. Well, I guess all shamans with the talent of Brim into Life being slightly increased in the amount of maximum health, just a slight survivability update. But for enhancement, we are seeing some substantial buffs, with all of their elemental abilities being amplified, from Chain Lightning, Flame Shock, Frost Shock, Fire Nova, Crash Lightning, but also the Primordial Wave's additional Lightning Bolts. Now, this set of changes will affect you differently depending on the kind of build that you end up playing. If you're primarily raiding as a shaman, you're looking at about 3 to 4% damage amp. For any of you that enjoy playing the Hailstorm talent where you cleave with your Frost Shocks, you're looking at a roughly same amount of single target damage increase, but about a 9% increase within AoE content, which is huge. However, if you are playing the Fire Nova build, primarily paired together with Swirling Maelstrom, then you're looking at about a 2.8% single target buff, but a decent 9% buff for AoE content. So depending on the build that you're running, it's about almost a 10% viability increase when it comes to big group situations, which is kind of exciting. And I think Shaman is definitely worth picking up in preparation for the War Within, since the spec for the most part doesn't change too much heading into the next expansion. So learning how to play it now will actually transfer over into the War Within fairly easily. And when it comes to Warlocks, we've seen a bit of a weird update where abilities such as Fear are now going to cost a little bit less mana, reduced down to about 4% base mana. And we also got another reduction here with the Demonic Gateway, reduced from 20% of your base mana down to 10%. I suspect this is primarily a PvP change, but it's being applied for PvE servers just because it's a nice convenience, but it's likely to cut down on just how much mana a Warlock is able to consume in the PvP content, so that they don't really end up getting limited too early when it comes to the overall main resource usage. And from there on, I want to move on to some PvP specific changes. And I gotta say, the amount of PvP adjustments this week is actually more than that for PvE, raids, and dungeons. Starting off, we're seeing what should have been a must-have nerf pretty early on for PvP content, and that is a nerf to Seal of the Uranus Chosen. Seal of the Uranus Chosen is a faded ring with an additional fire effect that comes from the raid of Vault of the Incarnates. This ring drops from the very first boss of Aranog and provides you with additional fire damage every 2 seconds. As long as the class can generate fire damage easily, they can get quite a bit of value out of this ring. So anything like an elemental shaman, an evoker, maybe even a strength class with the legendary, which has become more usable within PvP content, because the legendary simply puts a fire debuff on the target that keeps ticking and keeps proccing the ring, creating for additional damage. Now, the ring was initially nerfed for PvP a while ago, but with it being reawakened, it now gets a higher item level. And with the ring having perfect stats for PvP, being versatility heavy, it is actually a must-have item if you want to be competitive. So they're nerfing this ring by 50%, which probably should have been done before. So nerfing the ring does still make it usable, but it does make it less of a best-in-slot item for many classes out there. Now, another class pick that's seen a nerf this week is the Havoc Demon Hunter, which is just getting outright cut down by 4% in overall damage within PvP content, with their passive magic damage reduction of demonic words reduced by half in PvP, providing them only 5% magic damage reduction instead of 10%. I don't think this will be enough to complete the kill off Demon Hunter, but it does end up hampering their lead, which they currently have when it comes to melee DPS classes within PvP content. Now, the only other class getting nerfed for PvP is going to be Balanced Druids. Ever since they recently reverted a nerf to Frenzied Regeneration for both Feral and Balance, they noticed that Balance got a bit of a windfall when it comes to being able to survive some of the more deadly situations when using the defensive of Frenzied Regeneration. So, with this week's update, Frenzied Regen is actually being nerfed a bit, which is only going to heal the druid for 5% of their health every second instead of 8%, which does offer you steady healing, but it does now cut down on the amount overall healing you could do within PvP combat. Though they did finally end up fixing one of the druid bugs with Balance of all things, where if you now invest 2 talent points into this talent, it now provides you the correct amount of critical strike value, instead of forcing druids just to put 1 talent point into this ability. And besides this, surprisingly, we saw a buff for Restoration Druid for PvP. Not in their overall healing, but actually in their damage. Abilities such as Wrath now do 50% more damage within PvP. Starfire also does 50% more damage within PvP. And then the ability of Moonfire does 80% more damage in PvP. So if you're a Rested Druid and you enjoy maybe playing a more aggressive playstyle, or you want to be a little bit more helpful when helping your team secure a kill, there might be now an opportunity for Restoration Druids to utilize some of their hybrid capabilities and even maybe pair it together with Convoke the Spirits in order to help land some kind of a big kill opportunity. Either way, I'm usually a big fan of making healers a little bit more aggressive. I know not everybody enjoys it, but I think it can still open up a pretty fun opportunity for Restoration Druids to be a little bit more deadly and a little bit more impactful when it comes to team play. When it comes to the class of the Hunter, we are seeing a small adjustment to one of their PvP talents that is being Sniper Shot. Sniper Shot's range is being reduced to 30% increase rather than a 40% increase. Sniper Shot damage also no longer is affected by Mastery Sniper training. It looks like they've been going after the ability of Sniper Shot just to make sure that hunters don't have the craziest opener from a distance, and this is just another attempt of them trying to see if they can curb the value of Sniper Shot within PvP content, but also the additional range that marksmanship hunters can naturally spec into. Then we have the spec of Holy Paladin, the PvP edition, where we're seeing a buff to Flash of Light being increased in healing by 12%, though primarily most of this update is going to consist of damage buffs instead. Abilities such as Judgment are going to deal 30% more damage in PvP combat. Hammer of Wrath is going to hit for 50% harder, and even your healing ability of Holy Shock, which can be used a little more aggressively, is also being amped by 20% within PvP. This creates an opportunity where Paladins could potentially spec into a more melee healer playstyle with Avenging Crusader, which could give him a little bit more stopping power and a bit more of a finishing potential when it comes to team play contribution. Though Glimmer of Light healing is being decreased by 5% within PvP, which isn't the biggest nerf overall. This build, however, is also going to tackle some of the Holy Priest aggressive gameplay within PvP combat, so aggressively purging enemy dispels with mental agility is getting a slight reduction, reducing the mana cost of your Purify Disease, Purify, and Mass Dispel by 25% instead of 50%. And for Holy specifically, abilities such as Holy Fire direct damage is now reduced by 20% within PvP. And also, the cooldown reduction of Chastise is now reduced by 1 second per talent from Voice of Harmony instead of 2 within PvP combat. And with the last but not least of this update, we have a small adjustment for Subtlety rogues, where we're seeing a slight buff to some of their sustain-based damage. Things such as Rupture, a finisher that applies a bleed on your targets, is actually being amplified by 15% for PvP specifically. On its own, Rupture would be a decent bit of damage, but the fact is you can actually affect Rupture in multiple different ways. Rupture can gain benefits from Finality to be increased by up to 15 and 30% in damage, but also you can easily spread Rupture to multiple targets, having the ability to deal additional damage as Shadow. Any tier set for Season 4, which is the same tier set as in Season 3, allows you to create Shadow clones that can mimic your finisher also, which overall can generate quite a bit of additional damage for Subtlety rogues outside of your main burst windows. To keep building upon this additional sustained damage, we are also seeing buffs to both the ability of Backstab and Gloomblade, both being increased by 15% within PvP, likely to give Subtlety rogues a bit more sustained output, again, outside of the primary bursty cooldowns. With that being said, that's going to be the entire list of class changes that are coming out with this weekly reset. Overall, I am glad that they're finally making some kind of changes. We've been talking about the War Within for quite a bit on this channel now, and the last time I really covered anything retail was with the patch 10.2.7, as well as with Mists of Pandaria Remix. So it's good that they're at least addressing some issues, though as you saw, not all of them are a hit or a miss. I would love to see even more of these kind of updates fairly regularly, though maybe something that's a little more effective than the Survival Hunter tier set that they're attempting to fix. Because even if we are in the final season of Dragonflight, with the expansion basically being a little bit on a holdover until the War Within, I still wouldn't want to see the game not get any fundamentally big changes, or even bug fixes, because Blood Death Knights is still running around with a 2-piece bonus from the new season, but also a 2-piece bonus from the old season, because that actually offers more gain than running the full 4 set of the newest available season, which is a little bit awkward. Because it seems that they're putting a lot of attention towards Remix as well as the Alpha, and makes sense, we want War Within to be as best as it possibly can be. I just don't want to have the expansion of Dragonflight feel completely abandoned, and I feel like some good surgical adjustments to fix a lot of the class problems, and even some small tweaks in talents and power gains in order to help address overall class balancing and tuning could really go a long way when it comes to putting Season 4 of Dragonflight in a much healthier state. But with that being said, that's going to be a full set of class changes. Let me know what are your thoughts about these in the comments down below, and what other changes do you hope that they make in future builds? What are some of the classes that you think really need a bit of a fix for you to start really enjoying them for whatever is left over within Season 4? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.